All right, welcome to today's episode of the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast. We've got one of our favourite guests back on. Number 2. I think you're the first person to be on 2 episodes. Darren, how do you feel?
Nice. Great. It's good to be back. Yeah, and I'm glad people are getting value. So that's good.
Well, I was saying before that your episode podcast on Spotify is the most popular on the podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all that sort of stuff. Really good engagement, most listeners. Now, there's some on YouTube that have gotten quite a lot more views, but I think that's because of the YouTube algorithm or whatever it is. But yeah, for the people who are business owners, they really love the episode we did on how to get $100 an hour clients, and that's really cool. I love it because a lot of people wouldn't have ever have heard about you before this, even though you've done a couple of podcasts here and there, and yet you're getting more listeners than 100,000 or people with 100,000 Instagram followers, and we had a few of them on too. So look, people like you, so we got you back on. How does that feel?
That's good. That's good. That always feels good.
So
Yeah.
we talked about how to get $100 an hour clients before, and we're talking
Yeah.
about it from a marketing perspective. But there's 2 things that we didn't talk about, and you can look. There's a whole. We could spend years talking about the subject, and I love talking about it. You love talking about it. People like listening to it. So we're going to take it. I guess this is the sequel, which is
Yeah.
the 2 things that we did or that I've done in Silverstone Gardening. You've been along for the journey to help us increase our hourly rate, get more enjoyable clients, avoid burnout, actually really like doing the work that we do. Just massive bang for bucks. 2 things that we've worked on. They're probably going to surprise people when they find out what they are. Some people will think this is way too simple, you're overselling it. Some people will think it's way too difficult, I don't know if I can do it. I think both of them are wrong because you can do it. And yeah, it is surprising, but the results are off the charts. And so we're just going to waffle on and just talk about stories, and hopefully people find it interesting, and we can get a lot of benefit to people out there.
Yeah.
But here are the 2 things without any further ado. The first thing is solving the administration problem. A lot of people get into business, into gardening, thinking they're going to be a gardener, and they have no idea how many administration issues they're going to have, how that zaps you, how that steals your energy, makes it a very difficult business. We're going to talk about ways to solve that. There's different ways to solve it, different things we've done, ways we're changing things. And the second thing is moving from being somebody who, and we touched on this in the last podcast, I'm going to talk about it a little bit more, moving from someone who's a responder, simply just responds to requests, to somebody who positions themselves as more of an expert, and as a result goes from just responding and taking the work that comes in to somebody who can recommend and change people's properties. You work with a lot of people, Darren. You see these issues all the time, right?
For sure. And interesting the journey you've gone on, and over the years, it's highlighted right across the country, Luke. The same key issues of the admin side and the taking the endless phone calls, when you're busy, how to respond to them in a timely manner, how to do that, when you're busy, maybe cutting lawns, but you want to grow your business, and that whole kind of catch
Yeah.
situation. And then the other thing of just, I think a lot of people just set themselves up as a commodity. I just cut lawns, and we did touch on that the last time.
Yeah.
And that's okay to get started, and we said that, and you start where you're at, but the need to grow that and to enjoy your business more is where you become better at what you do and provide a better service for your clients, and as a result, you get paid more. It's that simple.
I remember when you first started working with more people in this industry, because we've been working together for 4 years. For those who didn't watch the first episode, Darren is a business coach, and we've worked with each other for 3-4 years, something like that. And over time, more and more people from this specific industry have been working with Darren. And I remember maybe a year ago or something like that, you saying that it surprised you, but just about everybody who you've talked to as a business owner in the lawn and garden industry hates their phone. Absolutely hates it when it rings. Absolutely
Yeah.
hates it. And you were like, that's surprising. And I was like, yeah, I remember my wife
Yeah.
calling me halfway through between jobs
Yeah.
and me getting annoyed at her because she had an office job at the time. And so she just had some time and she thought she'd call, hey, you going, this and that. I've got to turn off my mower. I've got to take my earmuffs off. You know, at the time I didn't have Bluetooth ones that could answer the phone. Like, it was this whole ordeal, and it's 30 something degrees, and I'm just trying to get everything done. And all of a sudden, someone calls me, and it's annoying. Like, I
Yeah.
don't, but this is catch 22 because you got to answer the phone
Yeah.
to actually get work. And so, what ends up happening, people just don't answer the phone. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
eh,
Mm-hmm.
it's business 101. Like, just answer your phone, like, be helpful. But you can say that, but it's so much harder once you get out in the field and you're actually mowing lawns, you're
Yeah.
cutting hedges, the weather, it's raining, you're in and out of rain, all that sort of stuff. You
Mm.
don't understand unless you're out there, which is why it surprised you, because it
Yeah.
seems something else so basic. But to
Yeah.
someone in the industry like me, I was like, yeah, I totally get it. But
Yeah.
then there's a huge opportunity, because if everybody else hates answering the phone, if everybody else is leaving it till the afternoon to get back to clients,
Yes.
massive opportunity that if you can
Yeah.
solve that a problem, you immediately stand out compared to everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And do you remember the time we did the exercise where I went out like mystery shopping to get quotes
Yes.
from? Do you remember that one?
Yep.
I don't know. I think I told 10 or a dozen people because you were testing your pricing and services and what the responses were. And I was ringing all these contractors. And I think I said to you, I was shocked at the number of people who didn't answer their phone. And then of those who did, I think out of 10 or 12, I had one person. So I had two quotes, one on the phone. They asked me some details, and one came out. So out of about a dozen people, I got two quotes. Um, and I came back to you and I said, it's no wonder that you're growing your business, etc., because you had put things in place, and we'll talk about that. Um, and then even when I got a call, like, or I might go through to a voicemail and leave a message, but people wouldn't call me back, or they might call me back the next day or later in the evening or something like that. But in today's society, if you answer the phone in the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes or respond, the chance of you getting work just goes through the roof.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Well, I'll give you an
Yeah.
example. Let me check my phone right now. I
Yeah.
don't know if this person's going to listen to this podcast, but they're about to get outed. I went to a quote yesterday for a lawn installation, and immediately I'm at the job. I'm like, this isn't the job for us, right? It's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
basically 90% earthworks and 10% lawn laying. And so I call up somebody who we use, and they don't answer. And then I send them an Instagram message, and I'm like, oh, it's fine, And they're like, oh, I'll get them to call you back tomorrow. And it's halfway through the day tomorrow, right? And this is probably a
Yeah.
$10,000 job or something like that. And they still haven't got back to me. That's just the culture in the industry sometimes. And because
Mhm.
that's the standard, people think it's acceptable. And it is. You get away with it, right?
Mhm.
But that person who we're quoting, right? If this other person, the subcontractor, got back to me really, really quickly, and
Yes.
they went to their
Yes.
property this afternoon, and this property is
Yes.
10 minutes from their house, it's very easy for them just to have a look. They get a
Yeah.
quote in by the weekend, they're a week ahead of the competition,
Right.
right? They're killing it. And that just looks so much more professional. But it's easy to say, it's really hard to do. I totally understand that when you're out in the field, clients don't understand this. They're not going to give you this grace. I'll give you the grace for a second. That when you're out in the field, you're exhausted. You're doing all sorts of stuff. Your brain is rattled, right? You're thinking about
Mhm.
having to do your best, and you've got all these quotes you've got to send, and
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
client's just complained to you because you missed a tiny little leaf that was in the back corner of the property that you never
That's right.
saw, and the
Yeah.
temperature's hot and this and that's going on, and then someone calls, you're like, my goodness, I don't want to answer that, right?
Mhm.
But you now know, listening to this, that if you can solve that problem, everyone's just going to go for you, right?
Mhm.
And then if you answer the phone quicker and you get the quoting quicker and you're more friendly and you're more professional, we talked about this before. I've talked about this many times on the podcast. People just accept your price because they
Right.
know they can trust you and you're an organized business. You know,
That's right.
I guess you're probably saying this a bit to some of the people that you're coaching as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's what we call low hanging fruit,
Yeah.
and it's those simple little things you can do that get I call it the 80-20 again. We've talked about it before. The little 20% things that get 80% results, like do all the heavy lifting. Now, like you said, it's easy to say, and how do you implement that? Because if you're frazzled and you're out in the field and all that, well, what is it that you do that can get you those big wins? And
Yeah.
that's the big question, isn't it?
Well, let's talk about, let's get into the meat of it now.
Right.
Let's talk about the steps that you got to take to solve the admin problem. The very first one, you need some sort of CRM software, some sort of, CRM is client relationship management. But if you guys are still doing pen and paper, do you talk to people? Have you got any clients? I mean, don't name names, who are still
Oh,
pen and paper. Don't don't tell me you've
um,
got multiple.
no, no. To be honest, there's only a few, very few. Yeah, I mean, there's very varied degrees of people who are using electronic systems. Some are using them as if they were just a step up from pen and paper and not using the full functionality.
Yeah,
Because again, how do you get the time and the knowledge to do it, and how do all of
yeah,
that becomes a factor. So
100%.
you, even when you use one of those systems, you kind of do use 10% of it and you think, oh, that's good enough, because that gets you a result. Equally, I've got clients who have used it and it's like, saves them 4 or 5 hours a week, which, you know what I mean. So
Well,
again, you can use some of them to get really big returns.
I think it's like you. This is the foundation. You need some sort of client relations for us to do the real things that will solve the problem. Because just getting a CRM is not the real thing that will solve the problem, right? And for those who are still a bit lost, things like ServiceMate, Jobber, Service Autopilot. What else? What other ones are there? Have we looked at over the years,
Um,
Darren? What am I
a
missing?
Sortscape, is that's another
Sortscape,
one?
yeah, that's another
Yeah.
one. Those sorts of services. You need to have one of those for us to tell you first, for you to do the things that we've done and to take those next steps. And the reason is
Mhm.
that you have to get things out of your head and
Right.
onto something that is easier to manage,
Yeah.
and hopefully that you can get something or someone else to manage. And
Right.
essentially, what we're talking about here is building an admin team, whether that's still yourself, like, because you can do some of these things solo if you never want to hire anybody and deal with people. But
Mhm.
um, I think the solution is sometimes hiring somebody, and it might be easier. I'm jumping a little bit ahead of where I want it to be, but I'll tell you this story. And I've told this before, and people have found it very helpful. When I first got into business, right, I wanted to grow the business, and I hired a casual person, and then 2 years in, or a year and a half in, I hired my first full-time gardener. I had the work for that, that sort of side of things was all right. That, looking back now, was one of the biggest mistakes I ever made. And it probably cost me a year and a half of time, because that's how long that person worked with me before they finished up. And the reason is that I was a great gardener, on the scale of gardeners, above average, and a terrible administrator. And I thought I needed to be a manager. I thought I needed to be the person out there
Mhm.
taking the phone calls, organizing everything, sorting everything out, doing some gardening. So I hired a gardener to do the lower level gardening stuff. And I would do what I thought was the high level management stuff. I shot myself in the foot big time, because I hired somebody who was a great person, easy to get along with. Clients loved him, but he wasn't as good as me at gardening. And then I put myself in the most rubbish position I was in, which was administration. I'm terrible at administration. I don't like administration. I'm really disorganized sometimes with those sorts of things. And all of a sudden, I've downgraded my business on both aspects. We have a worse admin team, or because I'm doing too much of it for where I'm at, and we have a worse gardener. And I'm trying to grow the business, and I'm getting
Right.
burnt out because I'm doing the thing that I'm not very good at.
Mhm.
After this guy finished with us a year and a half later, about 2-3 months after he finished, instead of replacing him with another gardener because we had the work, I instead put myself in the field more and I hired a part-time administrator. That was the first step for me to grow my business to eventually, at a high watermark, having over 10 employees, all completely working with me being sick and only going to the warehouse maybe once or twice a week, never answering a phone, never answering an email, all that sort of stuff. So I had a major health crisis and my business still ran, completely run by employees. The first step was that I hired an administrator instead of a gardener. And that allowed me to work with them. And it was just me and them. And I talked to them on the phone all the time. They'll work from home. And that was the first step towards heading in that direction. And the benefits were off the charts. So many things I didn't realize. For example, we were now answering every phone call basically straight away. We just talked about that.
Yeah.
We're put in
Yeah.
a different position in the minds of our clients. We're just way more helpful. Second thing that happened is I spent more time gardening. So that person ended up being free because they might cost me, let's say, $100 a day. I'm making up that number, but you get the idea. I was doing
Okay.
$120 or whatever it was, more lawns every day. And I had more energy because the thing that I loved doing is what I was doing all the time. And the thing I hated doing, I had delegated to somebody who actually enjoyed it and was actually good at it.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
and I was really, really blessed in that there was a lady who was at my church, and she's somebody who I'd grown up with, and she had administration experience and was looking for a part-time job, and I was looking for that, and so it was somebody who I trusted straight away. And you don't necessarily have to copy that formula, but you guys can see how quickly that sort of thing will change a business from being, if you can make it work, from being average, responding to all of a sudden amazing responding, from being average customer service to all of a sudden top of the line customer service. And those things really start to snowball. So that might not be for everybody, um, which is fine. And it's actually really interesting because Darren's been working on something which is a little bit more suitable for small businesses, right?
Yeah.
You can take it away. Take it away, Darren. Tell us what you've been working on for the last year or so.
Yeah, so I've been working with small businesses for probably over 15 years, and I understand the things you're talking about. And to hire someone maybe is too big a step. So one of the things I've been honing in and researching and developing with a team out of America, and it's a service called Miscall Text Back, and it says what it is. So someone called you, so you have your marketing number on your website or social media. They call it, and rather than you answering the phone, if you want to, you can answer the phone. Your phone will ring and it'll tell you it's coming from this number. But if you're too busy, like we talked about, or you're in the middle of something, it just goes to a missed call, and it automatically sends them a text message saying, "Hi, this is Luke from Silverstone Gardening. Sorry, I missed your call. How can I help you?" Or something like that. And
Yep.
then what happens? You start this text message with them. Now, a text message is a lot easier to send. You can send it in like 10 seconds rather than getting on a phone call, because we all know you get on a phone call, you don't know how long you're going to be on that. You could be ransomed, you could be sort of hijacked from what you're doing for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. Whereas when you have a text message conversation, you control the conversation. And then eventually you can send, and I know we've implemented for you, and you're sending things like web pages. If you're
Yeah.
interested in this service, this is the kind of thing we do. Have a look at this. Tell me if that's the kind of thing you're doing, because you're doing a lot of filtering at the moment. You get a lot of requests, but you're doing a lot of filtering. So what
So
that does is it means you can manage that yourself with an
Well,
app out in the field.
what I was going to say is some people listen to that go, well, yeah, missed call, text back, sure, I can do that on my phone, right? But what's happening in the background is what's really amazing, because you can automate your texts. So you can get automated replies and basically have the computer do the start of your admin work and
Right.
get people to feel. And so it's not just literally one text back, right? You
No,
can
no.
trigger things. So
Yeah.
basically, it's an AI conversation that can be started
Right.
from somebody calling you. They call your
Yep.
message. You reject the call because you're busy. The message goes through. Then they
Yep.
text back and reply, and
Yep.
you can work to get it so that it replies in certain ways. So 3 or 4 text messages come through. It might hit a wall where it really needs a person, but
Right.
then it can say, all right, we've sent that through our team. We'll be back to you this afternoon. It's
Right.
exactly the same from your perspective as a gardener as ignoring the call and calling them back in the afternoon. But from the
Right.
client's perspective, they've had 3 or 4 text messages and they know they're just waiting
Right.
for somebody to get through. In the mind of the
Yep.
client, it is way, way, way better. And the other thing is,
Yep.
this is all recorded in a software in the background so that it's not in your head anymore. You can just, at the end of the day, go through your software and it will say, there's
Yep.
8 missed calls you got today. Here are all the messages. You don't even have to look at your phone because it doesn't have to be shown on your phone.
Yeah.
It's way better. And it doesn't just do your phone calls. It will do all your Facebook, Instagram, email, wherever. Google My Business, all in
Yep.
one place, all set up in the same way. We've been using this for maybe 3 or 4 months,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
we have seriously streamlined so much of our admin, right? Like it's
Yeah.
crazy. And it's,
And
you go,
just to say one thing, it's what you said earlier. It sets the expectation in the mind of the client.
yeah.
So they're actually in a conversation with you, and think, oh, some people think, oh, it's just, well, they'll know it's not real. No, actually, the kind of conversations you're having with people is like they understand there's really someone on the other end there. That's the mentality. But the key thing is setting the expectation that I've got your message, I've listened to you, we're in touch, and you can ask them all sorts of questions, and you can find out what they need before you even get on the phone with them.
And
So sounds like you're enjoying using it.
yeah, well, it's completely customizable too. So, and
Yeah,
the thing, like you say, it sounds like we're enjoying using it. It's like, man, where was this 10 years ago? You know, like, I mean, when
right.
we first started our admin, I said I was lucky because I knew somebody.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
mindset is, I enjoy managing to a degree. I don't mind that challenge. It's not my biggest strength, but it's also not something I'm terrified of. And so
yeah,
I had that option to go down that path. I already had a CRM. And you need a
yeah,
CRM if you're going to hire somebody because the communication gets out of your head and it's on the computer. And it's so much easier to manage that with people. But this is
yeah,
something that can bridge the gap even further between you needing an admin. And it's also something that you can do. You say you have a spouse who's got kids at home, right? And they think, oh, answering the phone is just way too much. And I know what it's like. You could, some of we're talking about it earlier today, like the number of calls that we get is insane sometimes. So it's way too much for somebody like that. But it opens up an avenue now because you don't have to answer every single phone call to spend time with the kids when they're in naps, go answer the stuff, and that's essentially what we're doing now is we've simplified our admin, probably cut it down. Now we've cut down our services too, but I would say we've probably halved equivalently,
yeah.
of the admin work because now that might not be reflective of all people. So don't feel like this is going to cut your admin time in half. It might cut it 80%, it might cut it 20%, depending on your business. But the reason why it's cut it in half is we're still very people heavy with some of our organizational stuff, but we have filtered out all the bad clients so quickly without really ever having to talk to them in person because of the way that we've set up our
Yeah.
system, right? Is there anything else that we've got about that helps people?
Yeah, I think to be fair, look, one of the reasons it works so well for you is because you know your business, and again, it's over the years you've honed it and crafted it. You also know who your clients that you're really trying to attract. So you can see, like, you know, the language. When someone rings, sends a message. So normally in the past, you'd have to jump on a phone call to listen to that and do it that way. You've got your business to where you can see in a text message, you
Yeah.
know, because you've got some lovely filtering questions that you use, and so you can. That's why you're getting a lot of value out of it, because your business has evolved. So someone starting out may not get that because they're still trying to work out who they're trying to serve, who they're trying to really hone in on. But you're using the system in its ultimate way, and that's why you're getting the big returns on it. So
There are other things as well that it does, but I think we'll just focus
yeah,
because there's
yeah,
finance and things like that. If you, I think the picture I'm trying to paint is there used to be a time where your options were hire staff, right?
yes,
Well, hire staff slash have a spouse do the admin work,
yeah,
which is not possible or you know easy for a lot of people, or do it yourself, and people would just do it themselves. But now with AI, which is essentially what this is an AI tool that
sure,
does a really good job. Limit it to what it's good at instead of there is a line where if you try and push it too far, it will seem a bit weird. There is a point where the human needs to get into contact, right? It's not like
right,
this amazing everything is, we're not over promising here where it's like everything will ever be dealt with. But what it will do
no,
is it can, if you use it right, and you set it up with Darren, by the way, you don't set it up yourself. So if you're like, oh, I'm completely technically illiterate, that's fine. Have I done anything with this? It's just been you and Gary, right? I'm
yep,
hardly involved. I just see the results. I'm just like, sweet,
yes,
done, awesome, right? But I don't want to. We don't want to linger too long because we've got a second part of this podcast to talk about. But if you want to find out more about this, then go have a chat with Darren because I think this is the future of the industry from an administrative point of view. People spend way too much time answering phone calls. The burnout rate is through the roof. You hate your phone. You never want to see it again. And though, it's an amazing weapon to win. And
yeah.
yeah, I would just like to say as well that I haven't answered a phone call. No, that's not true. I've answered one and I was useless. But in 7 years, since the end of 2016, about 7 years, I haven't answered a single phone call in the business. We've done thousands of phone calls in that period of time. And I've loved the industry. I hated the industry more when I was on the phone because it's not what I loved.
Yeah.
I wish this was around 7 years ago. This stuff wasn't. It's a really good option for those people who are doing that sort of stuff. Anything else that we've missed that we should have talked about?
No, I think so. Just really, the two options that you've talked about is you've hired staff, you've worked through that. That made a massive change in your business, and now you've got to a point where we're using technology to do heavy lifting. This technology
100%.
we're talking about is only just about a year old, just over a year old, so it's new. So it's about using other people, other things in your business to help you free yourself from the stuff you're not good at and focus on the stuff you're really good at. And one phrase I like to just I tell it to my coaching clients is you oh, it's gone from my mind. You the things that you're good at, you work on your strengths and you outsource your weaknesses. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
outsourcing could be to a staff member or it could be to technology. And so when you get that balance in your business, then you start to have fun again, which is what you did.
Yeah, 100%. Now, if you guys want to learn more, hook up with Darren. I'll put his details below. And yeah. Now, the second thing that we've done, and I wanted this to be a nice, short, smart, snappy podcast, personally for my own time reasons, but also because, um, I think it's not a podcast that I want to. We will talk about this more in future in a deeper level, like we've talked about with you. But the second thing that helps you transform your business, so you've got your admin sorted, right? You're answering your phone quickly. You're getting back to people. You've raised yourself up there. That allows you then to charge more because you're a better service to people, all that sort of stuff. Add this little thing to it, things really start to change. If you go from being an expert, being someone who just responds to people's requests
Mhm.
to somebody who is an expert or is on the path to becoming an expert,
Yep.
who also now adds recommendations, adds value to the client, recommends services. This is, if I had done these two things from day one in my business, my goodness, would things be better? Well, so much better. Having the admin sorted and then being the type of business that improves properties, sends out recommendations, does transformational services, not just, the requests the clients have. That's where things really get better. You have a story, Darren, and I'm going to talk about this on my own a little bit later on about how
Yeah.
I've gone down that story. But you have a story with something that we did at your property this year, and you're put yourself in this as the perspective of a client. So think of Darren as a client now, not a business coach, and tell us the story and your experience of it, Darren.
Yeah. Okay, so as you can hear, I'm originally from Ireland, and I love green grass because in Ireland it's everywhere, and you don't even have to try to have green grass more or less over there. So obviously, I'm living in Australia, and I like to have a green lawn. I hate having a lawn that's not green.
Yeah.
And so just earlier in the year, or just middle of autumn, um, Luke said to me, we can fertilize your lawn in a certain way, and you'll have a green lawn all winter. I went, really? Because I've had white lawns in the past, where it all dies
Goes
off, and
dormant.
because I don't understand
Yeah.
it. So he said he'll fertilize it, and I'll have a green lawn all winter. And I'm going, really? Okay. So he did, and sure enough, I think it was you did it end of autumn, and it was last week you were looking at it and you were saying actually it's holding its color really well, and I'm going around my neighborhood
Yeah.
looking at all
Yep.
the
Yep.
white lawns, looking at everyone's lawn who's dying. I'm going, if only they knew that they could do this one treatment thing, and they could have extra, like 3 months of extra green lawn. Like, little thing gets a big win. So
Yep.
I'm driving around my quite smugly around my suburbs now, going, I've got a green lawn from this one little thing. And the
Yep.
thing is, I didn't know that, right? I didn't know you could do that. It was your expertise, your understanding, and you've researched it and all that kind of thing. But you've got value from me, and this is the thing: clients will pay you for value, not for the technical services you do. Like someone like me, I just want a green lawn all the
Yes.
time, right? I don't
Yep.
care. If Luke comes up with a thing that he can do in 3 minutes and he charges me whatever for it, it doesn't matter because I want a green lawn, right? So I want the value, not the technical services. And so that's what you gave me. And I've got a green lawn, and it's great.
Well, this is the thing. This is a story from someone who is essentially a client. Darren is.
Yep.
Over the years, when I first started, I was just like you guys. We just answered the request and we did the jobs that people asked for. That eventually was leading to burnout. That eventually was leading to difficulty because those people often are cheap and nasty, and you might get a good client here and there, but you're basically waiting for people to ask you to do amazing improvement services. Over the years, I've been trialing things over and over and over again. And what's happened is I've been able to learn things and grow. And then you become more precise with your advice because you've got that experience. And then what happens is when you say, hey, look, I know what it's like here. You need to do this service. Well, hey, I get an extra service because of that experience. B, it's at a high hourly rate. Okay, fantastic. Because, those improvement services, you can charge a high hourly rates. But hear the story from the client. They're driving around the suburb, proud of how their lawn looks. They feel like it's a fantastic value for money, all that sort of stuff. When you get clients who are like Darren, who really want to be green, and an extra 50 or $100 here or there doesn't really matter, you've got a fantastic opportunity to completely transform your business by recommending services. Now, Darren, I'm going to talk about this stuff on my own now. So
Yep.
thanks for coming on.
Yep.
And I'm going to go through the story in the second half of this podcast for how I went from somebody who really didn't know much about lawns and gardens to a little bit more of an expert, and the shortcuts, just like we talked about shortcuts administratively, there's some
Yep.
massive shortcuts you can take now, which I wish I had before. And we'll talk about it then.
Brilliant. Thanks, Luke. It's been good being on.
All right, welcome to part 2 of the podcast. This is later in the day. I just want to say before we get further into this podcast is too short. And I thought half an hour was going to be plenty of time with Darren. But I think we can talk about a lot more. If you want to learn more about the stuff we're talking about with Darren, look, send us a message. Any questions you've got, send us a message. We're here to help. Unfortunately, we've got some time limits at the moment, so I can't make this as long as we would normally do. But we can also come back. We've also got 3 episodes being recorded in the next 2 business days. So you're definitely not going to be short on content after this. But send us a message. Now, I don't have too much time, unfortunately, but I want to tell you a little bit of a story. And you know what? I'll be honest, the rest of this podcast, it might feel like an ad. If you don't want that, you're free to switch off because I don't want to force it down anyone's throat. But the reason why we're going to talk about this is because this is genuinely the answer to the question about how I went about upgrading myself professionally from someone who was just only able to respond to requests like mowing the lawn, cutting the hedge, shoveling the mulch, into somebody who could go to someone's property and identify and solve issues like fungal diseases, nutrient deficiencies, compaction, things like that. And this is something that I genuinely believe in. I wish we had more time to talk about it, and I'm sure it'll come up many, many times. I think there's 3 major reasons why people don't succeed in the lawn and garden industry. The obvious one is pricing. They had no price, and we've talked about it in podcasts. Sorry, but the other 2, and the burnout is caused by the things that we've been talking about in this podcast. One is the insane admin hours, and the second thing is feeling like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again and never getting anywhere, never really loving what you're doing, feeling like you're just somebody who is just a lawnmower man. You're just the pleb of society who cuts people's lawns when they ask for it. But the reality is that I wouldn't have signed up for this business if I didn't believe it. We had other opportunities to go with people that we didn't go with because we didn't believe it. This business that we have partnered with, and this is the first time we've been able to talk about it because I've just finished, is genuinely a solution, and it's the solution I used. Not specifically this business, but what this business does is the solution to those, for me, to the problem of feeling like you're not really getting anywhere from a professional sense, from a quality standpoint sense. And what the business is called The Lawn Shed. I'm going to put something on the screen really quickly for you. Now, The Lawn Shed is I'll condense the story down really quickly, but if you've heard of Living Turf, you've heard of Living Turf. Living Turf is one of the biggest, if not, no, it is the biggest lawn product supplier in the country. But they specialize in golf courses, really big businesses, councils, stadiums, things like that. They created something called The Lawn Shed, targeted at the homeowner market. Neither of those are the type of people, typically speaking, who listen to this podcast. So what they realized is there wasn't really somebody out there who was specializing in small businesses. And so that's what they've made the Lawn Shed trade section. If you go onto the Lawn Shed website, you will not see the products that we're about to show unless you have a trade login. If you get a trade login, all of a sudden, a whole bunch of products become available to you that weren't available before. And what I love about this is it's finally a business that is prioritizing small businesses and not the residential market, not the homeowner market. Nothing wrong with that. But we needed somebody who was going to come in and support us as small businesses. And the main thing that I love about this is that it is all about support. And they actually care to hear your thoughts and opinions. we've been back and forth many times. Ian is the guy who is running this part of the business. We've been back and forth many, many times. And every time I bring up a product or I bring up something like, we need a different size of the product, because we've been actually working together, loosely, but Ian's been doing most of the work. I just sit around and look pretty. I only do one of those things well as well. But if I say to Ian, hey, look, what I understand the contractor market is people really want this. It happens. He gets it done because he actually cares about the contractor market and he wants to help out people. So what they have on this website is genuinely every single product, unfortunately, except for one, which I won't mention because apparently it might be getting discontinued. Hopefully they don't do that. Literally every single product that I use in my business is on this website. There is nothing else that I need. And I think it's exactly the same for you. There's nothing else. If you're doing really high-end lawn care in the residential small commercial scene, I don't think there's anything else you need. However, if you notice something, you can hit them up. The fertilizer has got full range of granular fertilizers. These are genuinely the fertilizer products and the types of products that we've been using over the years. The liquid products, there's a massive range of liquid products, including kelps, all sorts of stuff, fertilizers, wetting agents, surfactants, lawn dyes, insect control, fungicides, applicators, things like that. Plant growth regulators, you get the idea. Massive amount of products. The thing that allowed me as an individual to take myself moving away from the ad side of this, although it's all related, the thing that allowed me to move away from this is back in the day, let me tell you some stories. I used to walk up, I'm not even joking, I used to walk up and down the Bunnings aisle, reading every single herbicide, researching, writing down what the active ingredients were, what the differences were, researching those active ingredients, what their active compounds were, and a mode of action, sorry, that's the word I'm looking for, what the mode of action was, looking at the fertilizers, trying to understand the difference between these products. This is 8-9 years ago or something like that. Because I wanted to be somebody, I had that drive, I wanted to be someone who really knew what they were talking about and could help these clients. Every little bit of information I got just sort of grew on it. And I was an idiot back in the day. I found some information online that was wrong and I would try it and it wouldn't work. These days, man, the information is so good. Now, the thing that I forgot to mention is Ian is a former golf course superintendent. He's genuinely a turf expert, someone who's very knowledgeable. If you sign up to Lawn Shed and you need some advice, sign up to a trade account. Now, when you sign up to a trade account, they'll ask you where you found us. You say you found them through the Australian Lawn and Garden podcast. Follow the link that we've got through in the podcast descriptions. That helps us out. But they genuinely have the expert advice. You can cut out all that time I used to spend walking up and down the Bunnings aisle with, a lot of the time what are fairly average products in the scheme of things. I've got a little bit of issue today. You can cut out all that work that I had to do because after that, people came along who, make podcasts and do YouTube videos and all sorts of stuff on expert advice. But you can just now access genuine expert advice. If you've got dead patches in your lawn, say, hey, what is this? What product can I use? Fantastic around. What that means is you do that once, now every single time, honestly, every single time you see that fungal issue, you won't forget it. And I think that's how most of us learn. A lot of people I've talked to in this podcast, they don't do well at school. They never do well sitting down, having somebody, say, read a book and then tell me the answer. You got to get out and do it. And that's the thing about this way of learning. I think a lot of people will really appreciate it who are in this industry. So go through the website, sign up, say to them when you sign up that you've heard about us through the podcast, and that helps support us as a podcast. Now, the other thing as well that's going to do from a benefit side of view, and this is you can tell that I believe in this, that's why we sign up with them, is when you I think one of the most underrated things, or the most underrated pains of being a small business owner, is when you go to the shops and the amount of time it takes to go to the shops. If you've got to drive 20 minutes to go to Bunnings to pick up a single bag of fertilizer and 20 minutes back, the biggest cost is not the fertilizer. It's the 40 minutes of travel time you did, right? And that happens all the time. And we just put that into our day and don't remember it. Man, yeah, stuff that. Honestly, I haven't done that for years. It's way better now for me to go online, get a professional product, in my lunch break on my phone, order it, and then, a day or so later, depending on where you live and what product you got, maybe a week later at most, you've got that product at your door, a professional grade product delivered there. But I would say for 99% of applications, if you're prepared, man, you can get that sort of stuff. Remember the the experience, like for me, of just trying out things and getting it back and getting the enjoyment out of seeing those things, and then the moments where you can sort of brag to the clients in a sense without bragging. But I'll give you a story. Had a client not that long ago, a month or so ago, who had a dead patch or a dying patch in their lawn. I had fertilized their lawn at the last visit, the entire lawn. And they had this tiny little patch that was dead. And they tried to accuse me, they were unsure. So they were sort of tiptoeing around the subject, but they had the suspicion that I had killed the lawn through the fertilizer. And so I rocked up and they came outside and said, "Hey, what's going on here? You fertilized last time." I said, "Look, that's actually a fungal disease called brown patch. You can see because of this and this and this." Showed them some photos. And they were like, "Wow, that's amazing." Straight away, they asked me for a quote on something else at their property. They went from completely distrusting me to understanding that, um, you know, with their expertise. I remember at other points that we've been quoting on places and, being able to just immediately identify the weed and the product that we could use to kill it. I've been at other places where people have said, "Hey, I've used this product on the lawn and it doesn't seem to be working," but because I'd used that product and had that experience with it, I could see some of the effects. This was a herbicide that comes from that product. And I was able to say, "Hey, look, no, actually, you can see there is some benefit coming from it. Just keep your time, ticking and it'll work." Save them the money for applying things. And again, it's super helpful to those types of people. So I highly recommend it. Now, I don't think I'm ever going to do a podcast like this again where we just talk about literally a sponsor for about 10 minutes. Actually, that's not true. We are going to have Ian come on and do a whole podcast on how to create a complete lawn program, because people have been asking that, because we say we do these packages and they're like, "Hey, well, can you help us out here? Help us make a package." So Ian's going to come on and we're going to make some programs or show people how to make a complete lawn care program and go from there. But look, there's a welcome to that. And I think I'm just going to end this podcast there. Unfortunately, it's not as long as I would usually like. But those are two options that you have to help take your business to the next level. And I think they solve two of the three most common issues that we see in this industry, which is burnout from exhaustion with the administration, burnout from not seeing much change and feeling like you're still stuck where you were a couple of years ago because you haven't been able to upgrade the quality of the services that you've been doing and the type of clients that you serve. And then the one that we've talked about many times before is the pricing. If you have any questions, technically, honestly, just send them to me. Instagram is the best way to go. If you like the podcast, you want to support us, you can go through the Launch Shed as a sponsor. You can also go through the Patreon. There's a link to that at the bottom of the description and on our Instagram. Jump on Instagram, jump on Facebook. And thanks, guys and girls. I'll see you in the next podcast.